Lynne McTaggart, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. At long last, I have you on. We had some runarounds back in the day regarding trying to get you on my show with some time zone confusion and all that, but that's all settled now, and it's great to be speaking to you. Things here in the States, in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, are nowhere near as locked down serious as they are in the UK, and certain states are more locked down than others, as I explained to you. But it's great that we're having this show right now. I'm taking a little time off from work. I got some vacation hours to use up to be able to do this show in the middle of the day. And before I give you the chance to come on the show, I just want to give a couple of statements out to my listeners. Folks, I cannot help but be disturbed over the fact that nobody seems interested in paying me on Patreon to see my shows early before I upload them to everyone in the public. Just because I say that I'm going to make all my radio shows public for everybody 2 to 3 weeks after I do them does not mean that you have to wait 2 to 3 weeks to be able to access it. You are more than welcome to pay me money to be able to access it early, but some, of course, in this day and age where everybody is basically bare bones rations, it seems like, and slim pickings and all that, hard to make money. Everybody's willing to wait until I upload the video for free for everybody. I really don't want to have to make it where this show becomes a pay-per-view show where I force people to pay me to listen to half the show and only half the show is public. So folks, please consider subscribing to my Patreon page so I don't have to force you guys to have to pay me to listen to these interviews. I only want to have to ask you to pay me to listen to them sooner before I make them public for everybody. And Lynne McTaggart, with that being said, great to have you on. I will give you the chance to now tell your life story from a primary source perspective, describing who you are and what you experienced. You've got the floor. I don't have Alex Jones-itis. I will not interrupt my guests. So I will shut up and put myself on mute. You've got the floor. Tell us who you are and what you experienced, and then we'll get into the serious science and metaphysical questions after that.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. And it's lovely to chat with you at long last. I have a background as an investigative reporter. That's my background. I started out my adult life busting baby selling rings around the world. In fact, that was the subject of my first book, The Baby Brokers. And I also started focusing on medicine, looking at what works and what doesn't work in conventional medicine, and looking at the science of what works in better alternatives. And that investigation turned into what was then a newsletter 30 years ago called What Doctors Don't Tell You, now a magazine in 15 languages around the world. And back in the 90s, I started, we looked at medical research all the time when we were investigating for What Doctors Don't Tell You. I say we, it was my husband too, who's also a journalist, co-founder of What Doctors Don't Tell You, and now CEO. I kept coming across very good studies of things like spiritual healing. And it just kept occurring to me, if we can take a thought and send it to someone else and make them better, which is what they do with spiritual healing, then that undermines everything we think about how the world works. So I was puzzled by that and kept thinking about it, and eventually decided to do a book on it. Now, I didn't even know what I was looking for. I thought I was going to find something like human energy fields, but I decided I will talk to frontier scientists working at prestigious universities like Princeton and Penn State and University of Arizona, University of California, and many in Europe to find out why this could be. And to my astonishment, the work they were doing in consciousness research revealed a new science in the making. They were discovering through their experimental evidence that we are far greater than we've been told. The world operates far differently, and that we have to really think very differently about our lives, about how we relate to each other, about the world. And this was, what was interesting about all the work they did was that each of them had uncovered a tiny piece of something that really drove a stake into the heart of conventional science. But scientists are, unusual creatures. They don't want to venture on beyond their experimental evidence to speculate on what this might all mean. Plus, scientists also talk in code. They talk in math in the case of physicists. So I recognized after a while that this was going to be up to me to decode this and put this all together. So I did, and I did a book called The Field. But there was a lot of unfinished business with that, with a lot of suggestion in these experiments that thoughts are an actual something with the capacity to change physical matter. So the journalist in me was always skeptical about this. There was a lot of information about the law of attraction, and that kind of the secret was out. And I kept thinking to myself, well, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about very subtle effects, like moving a quantum particle, or are we talking about curing cancer with our thoughts? So I decided to write the next book called The Intention Experiment, as not only about the science of how our thoughts affect reality, thoughts creating reality, the science of intention, but also an invitation for my readers around the world to take part in ongoing experiments. Because I knew by that time a lot of prestigious scientists working in consciousness research. And I also had, a lot of readers around the world. My book, The Field, was in 30 languages. So I thought, well, if I just put them together, I'm going to have the biggest laboratory in the world. So that's what I did. It was an invitation. And to date, we've run 36 experiments, everything from trying to make seeds grow faster, to purifying water, to lowering violence in war-torn or violent areas, to healing someone of post-traumatic stress disorder. And of those 36 experiments, all set up and examined in terms of data by scientists working in these various universities. And of the 36, 32 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects. So I've been doing that, and I've also been scaling down these group intention, this group intention work from the thousands who take part in my experiments to just groups of 8, which kind of came about by accident around 2008, when I thought, well, I should probably do workshops on this, but I didn't really know what to do. And I was just kicking this around with my husband and staff members one day. And I said, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll just put people in groups of 8 or so and have them send healing intention to each other. And my husband's a great headline writer. And he turned to me and he said, I love it, the power of 8. And that's how we started really with this. And now I've run thousands of groups. I've written a book called The Power of 8, and I've seen thousands of people get miraculously healed in 10 minutes. And that was kind of odious and unsettling to somebody like me, who is, as I say, there's not a lot of woo-woo about me at my core. And yet I find myself doing books and doing workshops and conducting all kinds of work with the most woo-woo thing of all, which is miraculous healing.
Yes, and you've done all kinds of great healings. I'm sure a lot of people have great things to say about you. And well, regarding some of the work that you do, the workshops and courses, looking at one, the Power of 8 Intention Masterclass. Okay, this stands out to me because 8 is my life path number, but I'm guessing that this may actually have something completely different to do with what your life path number is. This Power of 8, is there something about 8 that the number 8, that's because Nikola Tesla would say 3, 6, and 9 are the magic numbers, but you say the power of 8.
Well, there's a lot of mythology around 8, Andrew. The Chinese consider 8 a really lucky number. There's the fact that 8 sitting on its side is an infinity sign. But as I described, This came about essentially by accident back in 2008. We put people into groups in our first workshop in Chicago. I thought it was going to be just a feel-good effect, putting people in groups, having them, the whole group do intention for some member of the group with a health challenge. And so we did it on the Saturday, and on the Sunday of the workshop, we asked, people to come back, and those who had been the recipients of this, we asked them to stand up one by one and talk about their experience. And again, I thought they were going to say, oh, it was relaxing. It was like getting a facial or a back massage. And that's not what they said at all. What they said is things like this. I have terrible arthritis in my knee and I'm walking normally today. Or I have cataracts and I'm 80% better. Or I have depression and it's lifted. All of these were our very first workshop. I have IBS and my gut's clear today. And on it went. So I was astonished and also disbelieving. I am probably, a great doubting Thomas at my heart. So I kept experimenting with this. I kept putting people into groups and watching what was going on. And after a while, after seeing this for a number of years in talks I would give, where people, last summer, a year ago, not this past summer, the summer before, when we were not in lockdown and I could speak in front of a large audience. I had an audience of 700, did my talk, put people in groups, and I asked everybody who had had an experience to stand up and recount it. Some people did. They talked about, not having so much pain. They talked about one woman could focus better, and there were all kinds of stories like that. And then we got to the last group, and they were all raising their hand, the entire group, and pointing to a woman who was sitting in their group in the very front of the auditorium in a motorized wheelchair. So I called on her. Apparently she had some idiopathic, i.e. they don't know why she had it, paralysis that would come and go. And it had come now for months. And she got up out of her wheelchair. She just stood up. And she talked about feeling more love than she ever had before. Now, I've seen thousands of these by now, and I've also especially seen it when I put people in groups and have them meet continuously for a year, as they do in a number of my courses. And then we see remarkable healings. I had a woman in my last master class that just finished, who was she was on antidepressants for 22 years, just couldn't get off. And the moment she tried to even titrate down, she had big reactions, and she's off of them now. And another woman who's totally sugar addicted. She's, so badly that she would eat in the middle of the night and be sleeping half the day. It was affecting her marriage, her family, everything. She's now off sugar. She's meditating, she's exercising, she's got a great relationship again with her husband and says it's been the best year of her life. So I see this. I see people overcoming illnesses, getting windfalls, getting dream jobs, finding a new life purpose. And because I'm such a skeptic, I actually keep track of this stuff with, progress reports. I watch what happens to people. And it's extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary.
I'm sure it is. And one thing I wanted to discuss regarding abilities to heal and all that, this is kind of pertinent to me to some degree with, you mentioned cataracts. My mother deals a lot with cataracts because she's an ophthalmologist. She's going to be retiring this August after many, many years in the field. Bless her heart. She means more to me than anyone or anything, but she and I kind of had a little bit of a falling out several years ago when I decided to take up sun gazing, and I knew that having a mother as an ophthalmologist and being a sun gazer was not going to mix very well, and she was very, very worried about me. And I heard conflicting things about sun gazing. I've heard some people say only the first hour of sunrise and the last hour of sunset is when it's okay to gaze with open eyes because the UV index is at 0. But then there's some people like Chief Golden Light Eagle who actually say that it's possible to stare at the sun with open eyes any day, time of the day, even at solar noon on the summer solstice, for crying out loud. And you can look at the sun with open eyes, and you're not going to have any damage because the body is not supposed to is electromagnetic, and the sun's electromagnetic, so the energy is just supposed to transfer right to your brain without causing any damage. However, um, I did get my eyes checked for my mother's sake a couple times, and they found what could be construed as damage to my eye from having sun gazed, and a little bit of a debate as to what actually caused this. Well, my mother would have started, well, see, I told you the sun caused the damage to your eyes, but I said, well, wait a minute, how do you know it was the sun? You ever heard the stories about how, kids who, and I'm not making this up, my father had, remembers when he was a kid, he had neighbors whose father was a dentist who kept kids away from candy all the time because he feared that they would get cavities, and yet the kids still got cavities even though the father took candy away from them. I contend that the fact that your thoughts manifest into reality played a role in that man's uh, visions of his kids getting cavities, and fear of them getting cavities caused them to get cavities, even though he tried to keep them from getting cavities by taking the candy from them. And of course, I've heard stories about a mother who says, my kids got the flu every winter because I was worried that they would get sick every winter. But then I heard about the law of attraction and how you create your reality, and I thought, okay, I'm going to envision my kids being healthy for a change, and lo and behold, my kids did not get the flu that winter after I envisioned them being healthy that winter. So I was telling my mother, how do you know for a fact the damage to my eyes wasn't because you and everybody else being concerned about me caused damage to my eyes by stressing about the sun gazing causing damage to them? And she didn't take very kindly to me saying that. But hey, it's not my fault that there's evidence to suggest that reality works that way. So, someone like me who may have caused damage to his eyes either because he stared at the sun or because everybody around him is worrying about him, which causes the damage, even though they didn't mean to cause damage. What's the truth behind all this? So, can the truth be found? And do I have any way of clearing this damage? Because you talk all about healing, um, and maybe you can give me some advice on what I can do to heal myself so my mother doesn't have any reason to worry about me.
Okay. Well, there's several answers to that, Andrew. One is um, to get a Power of Eight group together and have them do intention for your eyesight returning to normal. I've seen numerous instances of people with eyesight problems that have been healed through Power of Eight groups. There was a woman in a talk I gave a few years ago at Mile High Church. There was a woman who couldn't focus her eyes because she'd had a stroke. And her group did an intention for her. This was, again, just a single one after listening to a talk of mine. She was in one of the groups that I put people into after I give a talk at a conference. And she could see normally afterward. She had had double vision after having her stroke. And something happened during those 10 minutes and she was healed. We had the woman with the cataracts. We've had a few other instances of people like that. We have a woman who regained her hearing. She had damaged her cochlea, had cancer, and she had had damage through radiotherapy in order to kill the cancer. And her group intended, this is again my group that's just finished, the 2020 group, they did an intention for her to regain her hearing, looking at photos. The whole group looked at a photo of a normal ear, all the inner workings of it, and focused on it. And she could hear. And she didn't realize that she was healed until the phone rang. And she picked it up and put it to the deaf ear, and she could hear. It was really quite amazing. So there's that. There's also the idea of doing if I put my other hat on, which is what doctors don't tell you, and get well hats. There's all kinds of things you can do to help heal your eyes with there's a variety of substances and supplements like bilberry that can help with your eyes. So you can do that too. And third thing is when you asked, well, which one was it? People saying you can damage your eyes, or you looking at the sun? Well, possibly a bit of both. Either one can work. I mean, I've seen with a lot of my work that we're basically leaky buckets. We send our thoughts out and they can affect other people and things. They're not locked inside your head, that's for sure. So people constantly saying negative things to you can affect you. On the other hand, there have been enough suggestions that looking straight into the sun can hurt your eyes a bit too. So I would also say that maybe it's not a great idea to do that.
Okay, fair enough. And healing beyond your genes, Dr. Bruce Lipton, one of the popular interviews you did, it's gone 14,000 views. Well, when it comes to our genetics, we keep hearing that our DNA is going to become activated but we've been hearing that for a long time. I mean, so many strands have been allegedly suppressed when the genetic tampering was done by the control system way back in the day. Um, so, any advice you can give on how people can activate the DNA codes so they can access more spiritual qualities? Is it all a matter of just intending to activate your codes, or is there more to it?
Well, our genes are like the keys of a piano. They sit there silently waiting to be played. And as Dr. Lipton says, what plays the piano are a quartet of atoms that sit above every gene, and they are exquisitely sensitive to all of the environmental activities and influences we have. So the air we breathe, the food we eat, the friends we have, the sum total of how we live our lives, that determines whether that piano gets played. So we do have so many untapped genes, and there's everything from spiritual practices to healthy practices with food. Now, what's really important is to honor the physical animal and to eat as well as you can. Eat organic, unprocessed food is really important and really cutting down on carbs, particularly processed carbs, which are just nothing more than sugar. This sounds like basic information, but it's really key to creating a lot of metabolic processes that turn on and off genes. So the first thing is to eat really healthily and to get whatever supplements you need to make sure you take them, because you're not going to get everything you need from your food. So that's like one level. And then the other level, I think, that's really important for turning on community, spiritual genes is community. This is a really big overlooked factor in terms of health. I mean, I found it remarkable when I was doing research on my book, The Bond, about how important it is for us to have community. We need belonging more than we need food. The whole idea of that book was all about looking at whether Darwin was right when he basically described, life as war, that survival of the fittest. There isn't enough to go around, so you damn well better get there first. I found that was absolutely not the case. We were born to belong. We were born to connect with each other. So connection, and we've certainly experienced this over the last year with lockdown and inability to see our loved ones, etc. This is an absolutely essential part of spirituality. And then another thing that's really part of activating those genes is, believe it or not, altruism, altruistic acts. I mean, people think of altruism as, oh, it's a nice thing to do. It's not a nice thing to do. It's an essential thing to do. To try to figure out why these Power of Eight groups were working so well, I started studying the science of altruism, and it's amazing. Altruism is like a bulletproof vest. People who do things for other people live longer, healthier, happier lives, more spiritual lives. It can be the littlest thing, like taking out your neighbor's garbage, or the biggest thing, like trying to be part of a group that's healing someone else. But I found over and over again with my Power of Eight groups, when people stop focusing on their own intentions and focused on someone else's, they themselves got healed. It was an amazing rebound effect, an amazing mirror effect that kept happening over and over and over again, where people would have this remarkable experience. I think of a guy called Wes Chapman, who was part of a Power of Eight group I had just assembled in Colorado. And he was really depressed. He had had this terrible life. He was about 65 when I met him. He had big dreams to be a doctor or a biochemist, and he was in the middle of university, going to college, when he got called up by the draft to go to the Vietnam, fight in the Vietnam War. Now, at that time, there were no more student deferments, so he had to go, and the whole year was so traumatic for him that he came back deeply depressed, dropped out of college, and his life just went on a downward spiral after that. Even the love of his life, his second wife, didn't last long. She got a fast-growing cancer, and he lost her. So, and he had terrible medical bills to pay after that. It was just shocking listening to his sad life. So by the time I met him, he was in a state of what's the use? It was hard for him to even get up in the morning. Now, he should have been the receiver because he suffered from such depression, but there was a woman in the group with cancer, so he felt she was more deserving. So he focused on her, and the next day, he told me, he woke up and it was like he had heightened senses in every regard. You know, the grass was greener than he'd ever imagined it. He drank a cup of herbal tea and it just about blew his mind. Everything was heightened. He had a real sense of being uplifted, went around saying hi to everybody where he ordinarily would try to avoid people. And he has become a completely changed person. He's now re-engaged with life, doing power walks, really involved with his church groups, studying new things, writing, and he even had this amazing dream the second night after this experience, where he dreamed he was back on his college campus, and somehow his 19-year-old self somehow met him and communicated, but not in words, that there is still time. And that seemed to be this extraordinary experience, an epiphany for him that has enabled him to live his life all over again. So for me, one of the number one things is getting off of yourself. And I find that is one of the issues with the self-help movement that I find a problem sometimes, because people are so encouraged to focus so tightly on the self, when I think the real healer is focusing on other people.
Okay, but that raises the question of when does one know that it draw the line between obsessing about worrying about other people's problems and worrying about your own problems. I have gone through many spiritual events and things in my local area that, well, before the lockdown, of course, but and the one thing I'm trying to find is my dream girl to start a family with, and they always give me the same answer: keep focusing on your inner work. And every time I see a horoscope of reading that says don't worry about other people's problems, I mean, I think this runs counter to the service to others needs to take priority over service to self mentality that, well, we're supposed to be evolving into. Um, the idea that everything that you see in your reality and experience in your reality is a reflection of yourself. Um, One would think, okay, focus on yourself. You're going to change the outside world, but how do you know uh, when you're supposed to be worrying about your own problems to expand consciousness versus helping out other people and helping other things and such outside of yourself to expand consciousness? Hope I'm making sense to you.
You are, Andrew. I mean, focusing on other people and helping them doesn't preclude having certain personal work. But when you do focus on other people, that spiritual side of you, that part you're trying desperately to grow, automatically does. It's the nature of altruism. Is you end up on a physical level doing things for other people releases all kinds of feel good hormones. It's as good as going for a run. That's what happens. And it also tunes up a thing called the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in your body. It winds its way from your brain stem down through all the major organs of your body. It helps to release oxytocin, that love hormone. But what I've found in a lot of my intention experiments, what I've been doing lately is putting polarized groups together, like Israelis and Arabs. I put them together in an intention experiment to lower violence in Jerusalem. So I had cameras in 8 different Arab cities, in conference rooms in 8 different Arab cities. And the 9th one was in an auditorium filled with Israeli Jews. And these people were very wary of each other when they first came together. And after doing this intention together, what is basically kind of a secular prayer together, they started sending love to each other. They started saying, the Israelis were saying, "We love you, sister." The Arabs were saying, "Your God is my God." They were back and forth, big love fest. And as I say, the people who were, the guy who was bringing together the Arab communities and the woman who was bringing together the Israeli community were barely able to speak with each other beforehand. And suddenly this big love fest. So I see that it's a fast track. A group of 8, you want to find the love of your life? Get a power of 8 group. I've seen that over and over again. Again, in our group that just finished, we had a woman called Joy who really said her intention was to open her heart to love. She does intentions with her group. She does intentions for other people. Lo and behold, guess what? Somebody shows up in her life, a guy she knew 33 years ago. They are madly in love now, and her heart is way open. So I've seen this over and over again, but I think one of the real fast tracks is getting off of yourself.
Well, thank you for that advice. And when it comes to intent and your intention, um, different schools of thought on how it's going to affect your life. I mean, uh, the great orator of our time, David Icke, has always said that if your intent is to destroy the system, the control system, then you are going to be met with backlash naturally. But also, people have criticized me of saying too much about conspiratorial stuff on this show and whatnot, and maybe a little fear porn. I don't do as much as I used to when I first started doing this show back in 2013, 2014, but every so often I do, and people, what like Jim Sell, for example, when he first came on my show, and after you hear me do the news thing at the beginning of the show, he was like, "Where are you going with this? Do you actually think this fear porn that you're espousing at the beginning of your show is going to actually get anywhere?" And I was like, well, okay, you are totally mistaken if you are asserting that the law of attraction will backfire on me because I'm talking about this stuff. My intention is to expose this stuff with the intent that exposing it will throw a monkey wrench into the system of domination and control's ability to control humanity. And as long as my intent is to do that, then I am in no way giving them power when I try to talk about this stuff. Now, is my argument there that it's okay for me to do that because my intent is to throw a monkey wrench into the system? As long as my intent is to do that, I am not giving them any power. That's the first thing. And the second thing, David Icke, is he right when he asserts that if your intent is to beneath the system of domination and control, then you can expect to have hardships and backlash when you try to do things to resist the system.
That's a big question, Andrew, but an interesting one. Well, first of all, you're talking to an investigative reporter. So, I look at my job as exposing corruption in medicine. That's what we do every single month in our magazine, What Doctors Don't Tell You. We're constantly writing about the big bad pharmaceutical industry. And we're constantly, looking at that. And I think that the fourth estate, of which you are a member as a radio host, has an obligation to hold the authorities, hold their foot to the fire. That's what we're supposed to do. We're the fourth estate. We're supposed to do this for the public. As to whether this will create some sort of backlash, well, not on a law of attraction type of thing. I think as long as you're doing it with integrity and you're doing it and you're sticking to facts and not doing wild speculation, I think that is a good thing. I think if you are taking on the authorities, etc., expect them to have a backlash, of course. If you are attacking the government's response to COVID, for instance, expect Facebook and social media to start writing fake news all over what you do on Facebook, if you put it on Facebook, because they are being squeezed by the American government and elsewhere to follow the party line on how we're dealing with COVID. So it's that kind of thing. You may have a backlash in terms of them trying to assert control, depending on what subject you take. Certainly, we've seen all of that with COVID, absolute shutdown from the media on any kind of critical faculty in asking the government about what they're doing.
Yes, and on a related note, there was a video I recently saw, one of the Archangel Michael updates, in which Archangel Michael basically, to conclude the message, he said, gave a warning to the system of domination and control, saying, if you want to keep resisting, just beware, you reap what you sow. Well, it kind of makes you wonder, well, shouldn't they have reaped what they sowed a long time ago? I mean, one has to wonder, why is humanity still a slave to this system if the control system is doing all sorts of evil things to resist their demise from happening? You would think that they would be creating bad karma for themselves from all the resistance that they're giving to try to make life miserable for humanity to keep their agenda going. They would be creating bad karma for themselves. They would only be speeding up their demise. Well, if that's the case, why does it seem like our awakening and our freedom keeps getting postponed every single week? It seems like the most notable example of this may be that Nasara Jasara global currency reset thing, where it's getting extremely annoying, where people are like, yeah, the global currency reset might happen next Tuesday, as James Gilliland likes to say, and it's getting extremely ridiculous to hear that every so often. And the excuse you keep hearing is, well, the bankers are resisting more than we ever could have imagined. Well, if the bankers are doing all kinds of evil things to resist their control system from being shut down, you would expect that karma would come back to haunt the bankers and would shut them down faster, and we would be all free a lot quicker. But it seems like that's not happening at a very fast rate. So to make sense of this, if you can, exactly how much resistance does one need to give in order to reap what they sow, to not be able to resist anymore?
What you're kind of talking about, it seems to me, is negative. What you're thinking is negative intention is going to rebound on you. I think that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
I mean, let's go back to the Bible because you're bringing up, Archangel Michael. Well, Jesus walked into a temple and smashed it, you know? I mean, because he said, he was getting rid of the moneylenders. He wasn't afraid to stand up to authority. He did it over and over again. So I think it depends on what the motive is. If you're trying to smash another company or a system in order to profit from it, yeah, I think that there's a negative karmic element to that. That's probably going to catch up with you. If you're trying to smash a system that is corrupt, I think that's a good thing to do. I think you're just being a Jedi Knight, which I think, many of us have to be right now.
Yes, but I'm referring to the control system resisting us, our awakening to try to keep themselves in power. I mean, how much more of that can they do before the creator gods decide you've made humanity suffer enough? You're officially shut down at this point. I mean, kind of
Well, you're saying, well, the creator gods are going to turn it all around and make it all fair and get rid of the people who are exploiting others. Well, as far as humanity has been concerned, that hasn't happened anytime for a very, very long time. I mean, as the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy put it about Christ, they said about Earth, avoid that place. There was a guy who tried to tell everyone to be nice to each other, and they nailed him to a tree. So, this kind of the people in charge, whoever it's been, have thus been like this. Now, I don't completely buy, all of the conspiracy theories floating around, but we do know certainly that there is the corporate state, which basically, owns America, owns the world now. And will the good guys out there, the good gods, knock them sideways? I think probably they will knock themselves sideways. I think life has a habit of doing that to people, catching up with them, their own karma. And I think what we have to do is not worry about that. I think what we have to do is to do whatever we can to stand for a new and honest and fair humanity. And that means in my view, tapping into the extraordinary potential we have, to heal each other, to heal ourselves, to heal the world.
right. And one of the best ways to do that is massive meditations with large groups of people. Um, so, are you a proponent of doing that, or is it really like um, you don't really need to obsess about that too much? Meditate because maybe make you a little new agey and all to want to meditate to solve the world's problems. There's better ways to do it. So so support or not support the idea of gathering people in large groups to meditate to suppress world peace. You seem to be, among other things, I see some videos here talking about all the stuff that goes on in the Middle East and all the fierce stuff that goes on in that part of the world. They can certainly benefit from that. And Greg Radin has talked about the studies that show that um, meditation suppressing evil in the Middle East, but the Middle East is not the only part of the world, of course. They could use that. It's just probably the most noticeable because it's the womb chakra of the world, among other things. Well, one of the womb chakras, according to Andrew Bartz, is the Akashic Records reader. So, meditating in large groups, proponent or not.
Well, I mean, I've done 36 intention experiments, so I'm a big proponent of it. But I'll just correct one thing, which is meditation is one thing. Meditation is essentially not focusing on an outcome, whereas the stuff I do is an intention and it focuses on a very specific outcome. And I've run about 7 or 8, I think it's about 8 now, mass intention experiments to heal violence or discord, and I'm a big proponent of it. Now, with meditation, the transcendental meditation folks have done a number of studies showing that when a critical mass of meditators meditate in a particular area, the crime rate goes down. What we do is to actually have a focused thought, everybody thinking the same thought at the same time. Now, I'll give you an example of one of the 8, because all 8 have shown measurable positive responses. We decided a few years ago to do a big intention experiment to lower the most violence in the most violent area in America, which is St. Louis, Missouri, believe it or not, and a particular area of St. Louis, which is the fairground area of St. Louis. That's the name of that little part of it. And so we focused on that, and we did an intention over 6 days. And I got hold of, via the police, violence on violent crime and property crime for St. Louis as a whole and Fairground, just specifically. We got it from about 2 or 3 years before and then 6 months afterward. Then I worked with a scientist called Dr. Jessica Utz, who is a professor of statistics and an expert in consciousness research from the University of California at Irvine. And she went through it and mapped it and found that St. Louis as a whole, the crime rate continued to go up as it had been. Property crime, St. Louis as a whole, continued to go up. Property crime in Fairground continued to go up. But violent crime, the focus of our intention, bucked its own trend and went down by 43% and stayed down. So that is one of the examples of the kinds of experiments we do. And we've done it with Lower Afghanistan, 2 provinces in Afghanistan. We've done it with Jerusalem. We've done it in Sri Lanka when it was going through a civil war. Most recently, we did an intention on January 17th to prevent any further violence in Washington. Now, and this was right before the inauguration. Now, it was peaceful. Did we do that, or was that because there were 25,000 troops there? Who knows? And there are many, many variables when you're doing an intention in an area to lower violence. So it's hard to say with just one that you had an effect. But when you do 8, and they all do, then that starts getting interesting.
Yes, and regarding humanity's future and what's in store for us from a consciousness rising standpoint, we all know the past several years have been the system's been really big on putting illegal immigrants into countries, totally disregarding the borders and vetting processes. And I have heard Indigo child Matteo De Stefano, a brilliant Indigo child from Argentina, say that in the year 2022, next year, a significant thing is going to happen regarding the some geometric grid of the Earth is going to align and synchronize itself in a way that, for all intents and purposes, will allow humanity to get along with each other better than they would if that synchronization aligning of the grid didn't happen. Kind of makes you think maybe in 2022 it's going to be like the summer of love with the hippies, although hopefully we won't be smoking pot and being apathetic. We'll actually be active in doing things for a change. And I think that that's significant, considering that the past few years, all this illegal immigration that's been pushed by the system has been used to destabilize countries, causing different cultures to clash with each other. But then again, one wants to make the argument, if we're all humans, then why should an immigrant be forced to go through a vetting process to cross a border? Well, the argument has always been open borders doesn't work in the real world for 2 main reasons. We have different languages and different currencies are the primary reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And but we could hopefully change that in the future if we can get everybody to communicate with at a spiritual level or at best one language, maybe, and have only one currency or no money at all. If we can get to that eventually, then open borders would certainly work in the real world. But this idea that maybe in 2022 there's going to be some sort of a grid activation that's going to allow humanity to get along better with each other. Do you know anything about that? Do you think maybe there is something to that idea?
There's no question that we are profoundly affected by a load of changes. I mean, I know a lot about planetary changes. I'm not talking about astrology. I'm just talking about astronomy. I'm talking about the fact that that sun out there, a big ball of gases that's crossed with a lot of magnetic fields, has a profound effect on human life. And not just the heat that we need, but what happens when the sun explodes and sends some of that gaseous stuff toward Earth in the form of like a solar flare or a coronal mass ejection. It comes flying toward Earth and it hits our geomagnetic shield, and that has a huge effect on all living systems. Even though it's a very faint effect, in lots of ways it has a big effect on us. For instance, when there's a lot of solar activity, heart attacks increase, epileptic fits increase, psychiatric admissions increase. We get energetically destabilized. And there are other geomagnetic effects of all the other planets and the moon. So all of these things are operating in lots of ways, and there are certain alignments that affect us hugely. It also affects our psychic ability and our behavior. So there could be that kind of idea in terms of certain planetary things. I mean, the sun is extraordinarily quiet this year. I don't know if that's going to signal anything. I think that there are eons and times that are affected by all sorts of things. I think we are one basically intergalactic superorganism. That's how I like to put it. And we are profoundly affected by that. Whether or not this is going to herald a new humanity. I think if you remember 2012, it was supposed to be, we had just come out of that, the financial meltdown. And people were talking about it's the end of oil as we know it, it's the end of food, and it's the end of the world because it's the end of the Mayan long count calendar. And here we are, guys. But there's no question that we are going through a period of extraordinary disruption, extraordinary psychic disruption. We can see it, we can feel it, we know it, we're experiencing it now. And so this is suggesting that it is the beginning of a new kind of breakthrough. But I think what we're experiencing now is just the breakdown. And so it's kind of up to us as to, I don't think we're going to magically transform into wonderful human beings. I think that we have to do that ourselves. We have to get to a point of recognizing that the old system of doing things, the eat or be eaten mentality that we have been brought up with because of essentially modern science. I mean, science writes the story we live by. It tells us who we are and how we're supposed to behave. And the scientific story that we've grown up with, that's been around for 300 plus years, is one of scarcity and separation. It is the Newtonian vision that things in the world are separate, self-contained, and well-behaved, that operate according to fixed laws in time and space. And then that kind of idea of separation, which really came about through Newton, was bolstered by the thoughts of Charles Darwin, who was profoundly affected by population explosion theories of the time and felt there isn't enough to go around, so life must proceed through struggle, survival of the fittest, which he never said, but his PR guys did, essentially. And so that kind of mentality has been the override. that has essentially been adopted with the birth of industrialization, with the birth of colonialism, that one race is better than another. Hitler loved Darwin, that one species is superior to another. And it's been our justifying experience. Competition is just woven into our lives from the time we're tiny children. So what we have to look at is this is all breaking down now. It's just not, it's come to the end point of the kind of capitalism that we have grown up with. We are eating our own children now. And so we have to come together to do something else. But I don't think it will happen spontaneously. It's going to have to happen by a force of will. That is, by all of us deciding we have to live in a much better way.
Yes, and I think to conclude this interview, I think I'll ask you the most important question of all. Basically, how humanity can handle the release of the stuff that can wake them up. I mean, you mentioned earlier the idea of having trouble getting out of bed in the morning. Well, for people like Corey Good say, hypothetically, if the ETs were to show themselves and say, "We are here. We've always been here," the ancient astronaut theorists, and the UFO nuts were right all along. Now you have no choice but to believe them because we are acknowledging that we are here. And if we were to release all the technology that could make oil and coal become obsolete and provide for everybody, so we can quit our 9-to-5 jobs and actually get everything, then, well, that wouldn't actually work too well, because humanity would not be able to cope with the shock of having been lied to for so long, that people will essentially not want to get up in the morning, and society is going to fall apart. And I hate to think maybe he's right on that, but Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartz, is one of his insights, one of the more inauspicious insights that I remember, was one he titled "The Future" with a question mark after the word future, mentioning that there's an alternate timeline that he saw where there was a timeline genocide where in the year 2004 everything was actually released. All the UFO stuff and the conspiracies were all revealed to be true, and the suppressed technology was released, and it didn't actually work out too well. Society fell apart because humanity could not put up with the shock of having been lied to for so long, and it was too much of a shock to the system to be able to live on with their lives. So I mean, it kind of makes you want to wrap your hands around the neck of the human race and say, why do you have to be so lost in a trance that you have to force the rest of us to be slaves simply because you can't handle the truth? I mean, it's kind of a disturbing realization. But is there, and I hate to ask you this, but is there actually some truth to the claim that humanity can't handle the truth to the point where releasing all of this technology that could allow us to become free, quit our jobs, get everything provided for us, would actually be detrimental?
No, there's absolutely no truth to that at all, I don't think. I think the average person knows that we're being lied to in lots of ways. They don't trust politicians. Um, they don't trust politicians so much that they stormed the Capitol a month and a bit ago. There's a huge percentage of people out there, and certainly where I live here in the UK, who don't trust politicians, who are angry with being lied to, who know we're being lied to and we're being played. And there's also a general goodness that I find in most people that just needs to be, unleashed. As I say, I think if we are victims of anything, we're victims of the wrong story of how we're supposed to be. And if we are enabled to live the life we were supposed to, then you will see a lot of goodness rise up. So I think the answer to all of this is to stop worrying about, people as though they're stupid, and to think about showing the way. I think for people who are looking at all of this, I think the people we have to worry about are the few who are in charge, because they suppress a lot of information that should go to the many. So it's been for centuries. So I think it's really important. I use the term Jedi Knights. I think it's really important for all of us who are in the media or whatever to be Jedi Knights, to help, to help get over the Death Star. And the Death Star, in my view, is the establishment that isn't being honest with the public, that puts profits before health and humanity, and all of that kind of thing. And so we have to continually resist against that. And I think people are distrusting that, but they don't have an alternative, because what they have to worry about is putting food on the table, taking care of their families. So it's pretty hard for them to do that. But I think demonstrated that or if the corrupt organizations or governments are exposed, humanity cheers.
You believe humanity will cheer and will not be in shock and disbelief and not be able to get up in the morning from having been lied to for so long. Okay, that's very optimistic. I hope you're right about that. Well, it's supposed to be coming out soon. Some big things are set to be in store in April, allegedly, according to people like Bold Pony, who have created some sort of a timeline and all that. But that remains to be seen, and that's for another day. So I guess we've gotten a little past the hour point. I also upload my interviews in addition to YouTube to Cost.tv, and they only allow for 1 hour max. So this did go a little over an hour, excluding all that chit chat we had at the beginning. I may have to put this in two separate videos when I upload it to Cost.tv after YouTube, but I will do that, and I will get it uploaded to YouTube. But of course, listeners, if they want to listen to this interview early, will have to pay me on Patreon. If not, then they will have to wait 2 to 3 weeks before I make it public. And of course, the fact that I said that leads me to think people will continue to wait 2 to 3 weeks rather than pay me, because that seems to be what everybody wants to do in this day and age, and I can't blame them. But at the same time, it is kind of disappointing. And
Sure.
I guess to end this, I'll give you the chance right now. Get out anything you like, well, for the hell of it, why don't you tell us what exactly is the lockdown like in the UK, for those of us that are wondering, because here in the States it's a little different. I mean, I heard the CPAC conference down in Florida is going to take place in Orlando, and I'm wondering how in the world did they manage to get that conference going when every other conference is being shut down. Well,
Yeah.
people
Well, I think Florida, as you said before, it's very different in the different states. I know events that are going ahead in Florida and Mexico and a few other places, and I know events that are being canceled, and a number of mine have been. Well, we're in total shutdown, and we're going to slowly open at 5-week intervals starting March 8th, and we've got schools open, and then the next one is going to be the ability to meet with a group of 6 and some outdoor sports. People are allowed to exercise once a day outside, but no restaurants, etc. Hairdressers are open. They're slowly going to open up so that by June 21st, they say that everything will be open. But let's see what happens. I mean, this is our 3rd lockdown, so we're all pretty bored of it and dying to get out there again and resume whatever new life that's going to be.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, I mean, you don't want to resume life and be back to square one again regarding the same hamster wheel of
Well,
enslavement.
Andrew, that's a long question. We have a quarter of the population vaccinated. Now, if that vaccine works and it's all of the vulnerable folks, then why can we not resume normality? Because all of the people who are at risk of dying from COVID have been vaccinated. So the question is, if it works, why are we worried? So that's my big question.
Well, yeah, well, of course, there are
Anyway.
some who assert that, I'll conclude this by saying that there is the idea that the shutdown is really not being instilled by the bad guys. It's actually being instilled by the good guys who need us to be locked down so they can clean up the garbage and clean up the mess and get rid of all the evildoers out in the
Well,
world. Well, I hope that's true, but if it is true, how much longer do we have to wait before you can clear out everything? And once you clear out everything, how much are you willing to reveal to humanity to wake us up to make us live a new life for the
yeah,
better? So I know a lot of can of worms
yes,
there, but it remains
sure.
to be seen. And this was a fascinating interview.
Okay,
Thank you very
Andrew.
much. I will upload it today, hopefully. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it'll be public to
Thank
everybody.
you.
Take care, namaste,
Okay.
and good luck.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Take care. Bye.
Bye.